night was dark and the forest was silent except for the sound of leaves moving in the wind. David, a human traveler, walked carefully on the narrow path. He had left the village late and now he was far from home. The moonlight was weak and shadows stretched across the ground like black claws. Every step he took made him feel someone was watching him. Then he heard it. A sound, soft and broken. It was not the cry of an animal. It was different. It was weak, almost like a whisper, almost like pain. David stopped, holding his breath. He listened again. Yes, there it was. A faint cry, high and trembling, as if someone was afraid to call louder. His heart began to beat faster. He followed the sound into the trees, pushing branches aside. The forest grew darker and the air colder. For a moment, he wondered if he should turn back. But then the cry came again, closer this time, shaking with fear. At last, he saw her. She was small, sitting against a tree, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her skin shimmered faintly in the moonlight, not like human skin. It had a strange glow, a soft silver tone. Her hair was long, tangled, and pale blue like frozen water. Her clothes were torn, dirty from mud and leaves. She looked up when David stepped closer, and her eyes, large, bright, not human, widened in terror. She tried to speak, but only strange sounds came out, a language David did not understand. Her voice shook and her whole body trembled. She pressed her back against the tree as if she wanted to melt into it and disappear. David lifted his hand slowly, showing he carried no weapon. "It's okay," he said softly, though he knew she would not understand his words. His tone mattered more than language. He crouched down, lowering himself so he would not look so tall or threatening. The girl flinched when he moved closer, but she did not run. Maybe she was too weak to run. David could see scratches on her arms and a cut across her cheek that was still bleeding. She looked exhausted, lost, and very young. He pulled a flask of water from his pack and set it on the ground between them. Then he slid it gently toward her. For a long moment she only stared. Then slowly, carefully, she reached out with shaking hands. She smelled it first, then drank in small sips, her eyes never leaving him. David saw her shoulders relax a little. She was still afraid, but she did not push the water away. "That was a start. Are you lost?" he asked quietly. Though he knew she would not answer, she tilted her head, confused, then pointed weakly at the sky. Her hand trembled as she raised her finger toward the stars, and her eyes filled with tears. David understood. She was not from here. She was far from home, too far. He felt a wave of pity, but also fear. What had brought her here? Why was she alone in the forest? And, more importantly, was someone else coming after her? Suddenly a sound broke the silence. The forest groaned with a deep noise, like branches snapping under something heavy. The girl stiffened, clutching the flask tightly. Her eyes went wide with terror. David turned his head, listening hard. The sound came again, closer this time. Heavy footsteps moving fast through the darkness. The girl whispered something, her alien words sharp and urgent. She tried to pull herself up, but her legs failed and she fell back against the tree. She looked at David, pleading, her glowing eyes full of fear. David had only a second to decide. He could leave her and run, or he could stay and risk whatever was coming. His hand tightened on his pack strap. His heart raced, but deep inside he knew what he had to do. He stepped in front of her, placing himself between the alien girl and the sound in the forest. His voice was low, steady, almost like a promise. "You're safe now." And then the trees shook, as something large and unknown moved closer. The forest grew heavy with silence, broken only by the sound of something moving closer. The alien girl clutched David's coat from behind as if he were the only thing between her and death. Her hands were trembling, her breath shallow. David could feel her fear pressing into his own spine. A branch snapped. Then another. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, almost like whoever or whatever it was wanted them to know it was coming. David's eyes scanned the darkness, searching for a shape, a figure, anything. But the trees were thick and the moonlight barely reached the forest floor. "Stay behind me," he whispered, though he knew she might not understand. Still she nodded weakly, her glowing eyes locked on the shadows ahead. Then suddenly silence. The sound stopped. No footsteps, no breaking branches, nothing. The forest seemed to hold its breath. David's heartbeat pounded in his ears. He gripped a heavy stick he found on the ground, holding it like a weapon. He told himself he had to stay calm. That fear would only make mistakes. But deep down his body screamed to run. The girl tugged at his sleeve, pointing upward. David followed her gaze. Among the branches, a strange glow flickered between the leaves. red eyes watching them. The eyes blinked once, then vanished, sliding deeper into the dark. David stepped back slowly, pulling the girl with him. Whatever it was not attacking yet, but it was close, too close. He knew they could not stay there. "Come on," he said softly, moving backward. She stumbled, but he steadied her, guiding her away from the sound. The forest was thick, roots twisting across the ground, but somehow they moved faster. Desperation pushing their bodies forward. Behind them, the sound returned. The thing was following. David's chest burned as he dragged the alien girl through the undergrowth. She was weak, her steps slow, and more than once she nearly fell. But each time he caught her arm, refusing to leave her behind. Finally, through the trees, he saw a pale opening, the edge of the forest. A clearing, faintly lit by moonlight. Hope surged through him. If they could reach open ground, maybe they had a chance. They broke through the last line of trees, stumbling into the clearing. For a moment, relief washed over David. But then he froze. In the center of the clearing lay something strange. A broken piece of metal, tall and twisted like part of a ship. Its surface shimmered faintly, covered in scratches and burns. Smoke still clung to the edges as if it had fallen from the sky not long ago. The alien girl gasped. Her hands reached out weakly toward the wreckage, her voice trembling with alien words. She recognized it. Maybe it was hers. Maybe it was why she was here at all. David stepped closer, his eyes scanning the strange object. He could feel heat radiating from it and faint hums like a machine still alive. He didn't understand it, but he understood danger. If this wreckage was here, then others might be coming for it. The girl suddenly fell to her knees, pressing her forehead to the ground as if she was praying. Tears rolled down her face, catching the moonlight. David bent down, trying to lift her up when the sound of movement returned. Louder now, faster. Branches shook at the edge of the clearing. The red eyes appeared again. 2, then 4, then 6, all glowing in the dark. Figures stepped out of the shadows, tall and twisted, their bodies armored in rough plates, their skin black like stone. They carried long weapons, sharp and glowing at the tips. David's stomach turned cold. Whoever these creatures were, they were hunting, and they had found their prey. The alien girl clutched his arm, whispering urgently. She pointed at the wreckage, then at the sky, shaking her head, her eyes begging him to understand. David didn't know her words, but he knew the meaning. If those things captured her, she was finished. The largest of the creatures stepped forward, its red eyes burning like fire. It raised its weapon and pointed directly at the girl. David tightened his grip on the stick. It was useless against their weapons, but he had no choice. He placed himself in front of her once again, his voice firm. "Steady. You'll have to go through me first," the creatures hissed, a sound sharp and cruel, echoing across the clearing. The night was no longer silent. It was alive with danger, and David realized this was only the beginning. The clearing was cold and silent, yet filled with danger. The alien girl trembled behind David, her small hands gripping his arm as if he was her only shield. The strange hunters stood in a half circle, their red eyes glowing like burning coals. Each of them carried weapons that pulsed with a strange light, humming with deadly energy. David's stick felt laughable in his hands. It was just a branch, weak and rough, no match for their blades. Yet he raised it anyway, holding it firm, his jaw set. His heart hammered, but he forced his legs not to shake. If he showed fear, they would crush him. The leader of the hunters stepped forward. Its body was tall and armored in black plates that looked like stone fused with flesh. Its face was a mask of ridges and scars. It hissed something in a guttural alien tongue. The words were sharp, filled with command. The alien girl gasped softly. She seemed to understand. Her head dropped low, her shoulders shaking. She whispered one word over and over, her eyes wet with tears. David crouched slightly toward her. "What does it mean?" he asked, though he knew she could not answer. Still, her reaction told him enough. The hunters had found what they were looking for, and it was her. The leader raised its weapon, pointing at the girl. The others moved forward, their steps slow but certain. It was like a ritual, a hunt that was already decided. David's chest burned with anger. He could not let them take her. With a sudden shout, he swung his stick at the nearest hunter. The blow cracked against its arm. The creature barely flinched. It turned its glowing eyes toward him and hissed, raising its weapon to strike. David ducked just in time. The weapon cut through the air, slicing a tree trunk behind him in one clean line. The tree groaned and fell, slamming into the ground with a crash. David's stomach turned cold. One strike would have ended him. The alien girl screamed, her voice sharp and desperate. She picked up a piece of broken metal from the wreckage and threw it at the hunter. It bounced off the armor uselessly, but her defiance made the hunters hiss louder, their red eyes flashing with fury. David grabbed her hand and pulled her back. "Run," he shouted, though he knew she barely understood. But her legs moved anyway, and together they sprinted toward the edge of the clearing. The hunters reacted fast. Two of them leaped ahead, blocking the path. Their movements were too quick, too strong. David stopped short, his chest heaving. The girl clung to him, her face pale, her breath shallow. The leader stepped closer, weapon humming. It raised its clawed hand and pointed at David. A guttural sound came from its throat, almost like laughter. Then it spoke again, this time slower, as if mocking him. The girl stiffened. She understood. She whispered one trembling word, "Test." David blinked. "What?" she repeated, pointing at the leader. "Test, fight." His stomach dropped. They were not here just to capture her. They wanted to test him, to see if this strange human was strong enough or foolish enough to stand against them. The leader planted its weapon into the ground. With its empty hands, it beckoned David forward. A challenge. A fight. The hunters hissed in unison, their voices echoing like a dark choir. The air grew heavy, thick with expectation. David's throat was dry. He had nothing but a stick. Yet when he looked at the girl crouched behind him, her glowing eyes begging him not to give up, something inside him hardened. He stepped forward. The leader lunged, its massive arms swinging. David ducked, barely avoiding the strike. He swung his stick upward, smashing it against the creature's jaw. The sound cracked, but the hunter only staggered slightly before turning back with fury. The fight was uneven, brutal. David was quick, dodging, weaving, striking when he could. The stick splintered in his hands as he fought. The hunters watched silently, their red eyes glowing brighter with every exchange. At last, David struck the leader across the side of its head. The creature stumbled, dropping to one knee. For a breathless moment, silence filled the clearing. The hunters hissed low, almost like surprise. The leader rose again, but this time it did not attack. It touched the blood dripping from its mouth, then stared at David with burning eyes. Slowly it nodded once. The alien girl gasped. She whispered urgently, He accepts you." David didn't understand fully, but he saw it. The leader had not killed him when it could have. The test was not about victory. It was about standing unbroken. But before relief could settle in, the hunters turned toward the girl again. Their weapons rose, glowing in the night. The challenge may have ended, but their hunt had not, and David realized the true danger was only just beginning. The clearing was tense. David's chest heaved with every breath, his arms shaking from the fight. The leader of the hunters stood tall again, blood shining along its mouth, but its weapon remained lowered. The other hunters, however, had no patience. Their blades glowed brighter, humming with deadly heat. They pointed at the alien girl, their red eyes burning. David stepped in front of her once more, spreading his arms as if his body could shield her from their weapons. His voice was rough but steady. "You'll have to kill me first," the hunters hissed in unison. Their sound was sharp, cruel, almost like laughter at his weakness. The girl clung to his back, whispering frantic words in her strange tongue. She pulled at his sleeve, urging him to move, to escape. But David stood firm. Then something unexpected happened. The leader raised one clawed hand and barked a command. The other hunters froze instantly, lowering their weapons but not their stares. Their red eyes stayed fixed on the girl, glowing with hunger and rage. The leader stepped closer to David. It reached down and struck the ground with its claw, drawing a rough circle in the dirt. Then it pointed at the girl and at the broken wreckage of metal behind them. David frowned. He didn't understand, but the girl did. Her whole body shook as if the meaning crushed her chest. Tears spilled down her silver cheeks. She whispered one word, broken, heavy with sorrow. "Key." David turned, confused. "What do you mean?" She pressed a trembling hand against her chest, then pointed at the wreckage. Her glowing eyes filled with dread. "I am Key." The truth struck David like a cold wave. She was not just a lost child. She was carrying something, maybe inside her, maybe part of her, that the hunters wanted. The wreckage was not just metal. It was a door, a machine, a secret that only she could unlock. The leader hissed again, its voice deep and commanding. It pointed to the sky, then at the girl. David looked up. The stars glittered, silent and far away, but he knew what it meant. She was not simply from another place, she was part of something much larger, something that reached beyond Earth. The girl fell to her knees, clutching her head. They don't want to take me. They opened gate. Her words were broken but clear enough. The hunters wanted her alive, not dead. They needed her to open something that should never be opened. David's fists clenched. He looked at the hunters, then back at the trembling girl. His choice was sharper now than ever. Give her up and save himself, or fight against creatures far stronger than him, risking everything. Before he could answer, the ground beneath them shook. The wreckage pulsed with sudden light, glowing lines spreading across its metal surface. The hum grew louder, deeper, echoing through the clearing like the heartbeat of a giant. The hunters hissed louder, their red eyes blazing with excitement. They stepped closer, their weapons raised again. The leader barked another order. The girl screamed, grabbing David's arm. "No, if open, all die." Her words froze him. She was not only the key, she was also the warning. David dragged her up, forcing her to her feet. "Then we're not letting them open it," he said, his voice shaking but certain. The hunters advanced, their steps pounding the earth. David held the broken stick like a blade, though he knew it would not last another clash. But then in the distance a sound split the night. Not the hiss of hunters, not the cry of beasts. It was a strange hum, high and smooth, almost like wings cutting the air. Lights flickered between the trees, blue and white, not red. The hunters froze. Their heads turned sharply toward the sound. Their eyes narrowed. David's breath caught. Someone else was coming. The alien girl's eyes widened with shock. She whispered two trembling words that chilled David's blood. "Others? Coming." And before he could ask what she meant, two new shadows emerged from the trees. Tall, cloaked figures with glowing eyes of a different color. Not hunters, not human, but something far more mysterious. The clearing was heavy with danger. Red-eyed hunters hissed in anger, their weapons glowing brighter. The wreckage pulsed with strange light, the ground trembling beneath it. David tightened his grip on the alien girl's arm, ready to run even though there was nowhere left to go. Then the sound grew louder, like smooth wings slicing the air, a humming unlike anything else. Two tall figures stepped out from the shadows of the forest. They moved slowly but with purpose, cloaked in flowing fabric that shimmered faintly under the moonlight. Their eyes glowed but not red. One pair shone like soft gold, the other like pale silver. Their presence felt different, strong but calm, powerful but controlled. They were not hunters, not like the ones that circled the clearing. The red-eyed hunters hissed sharply, their weapons rising higher, anger flashing in their glowing eyes. They seemed to recognize the newcomers. The alien girl gasped and pressed herself against David's chest, whispering in her broken words. "Not hunters, guardians." Her voice shook, half with hope, half with fear. David looked at the two strangers carefully. Their faces were partly hidden by the shadows of their hoods, but he could see they were women. Their movements were graceful like flowing water. Their cloaks slid aside and he saw their arms, long, elegant, but marked with glowing lines that pulsed like veins of light. The taller one with golden eyes lifted her hand. A soft hum filled the air and the hunters froze where they stood. Their weapons trembled in their hands as if an unseen force pressed down on them. The silver-eyed woman spoke, her voice clear and smooth, carrying across the clearing. "Enough." Though David did not understand the language fully, the tone was commanding, absolute. The hunters hissed but did not move forward. The alien girl whispered, "They... protectors. For me." David's mind raced. Protectors? Then why had she been alone in the forest, lost and weak? Why had they not found her sooner? The golden-eyed woman stepped closer, her cloak brushing against the ground. She looked at David, her gaze sharp, studying him. Then she spoke in a broken but clear human tongue. "You protect, child." Her words were slow, heavy, as if she had practiced them long ago. "Why?" David swallowed, surprised she could speak even a little of his language. "Because she needed help," he said simply. The silver-eyed woman tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing. Human risk life? For not his own. David said nothing. He didn't need to explain. The truth was simple. He could not leave the girl Then the golden-eyed one turned back to the hunters. She lifted both hands and a wave of light burst outward. The hunters staggered back, hissing in fury. Their red eyes flared, but they did not attack. They seemed to know they were outmatched. The leader growled low, then barked a command. One by one, the hunters stepped backward into the forest, their glowing eyes fading into the shadows. Only the leader remained for a moment longer, staring at David and the girl with burning rage. Then it too vanished into the trees. The clearing grew silent again, though the wreckage still pulsed with a faint hum. David let out a long breath he had been holding. His arms ached, his chest burned, but he was still alive. The girl clung to him, trembling but safe. For now. The golden-eyed woman walked closer and knelt before the alien girl. She reached out, brushing her glowing hair gently like an older sister. Her voice softened. "Child, you run too far." Tears filled the girl's eyes. She spoke quickly in her alien tongue, words spilling out like a flood. The golden-eyed woman listened, nodding, her expression calm but serious. The silver-eyed woman turned to David again.
"Human, not safe," she said slowly.
"More hunters. Come." David's stomach tightened. More? The fight had already been impossible, and now there were more on the way. The woman's eyes glowed brighter. "You must choose. Leave now. Forget, girl." She pointed at the forest behind him. "Or stay when war will follow you." David froze. The choice pressed on him like a weight. He could walk away, save himself, and return to his old life. Or he could stay, protect the girl, and step into a conflict far larger than anything he had ever known. The alien girl's small hand tightened around his. Her glowing eyes begged him without words, and David knew he had already made his choice the moment he first heard her cry in the forest. "I stay," he said firmly. The silver-eyed woman studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded, but in her eyes, David saw something troubling, something that warned him his choice had just tied him to a fate he could never escape. The night air was heavy after the hunters left. The clearing still pulsed with the faint hum of the wreckage, glowing veins of light crawling across its surface. David stood in silence, his heart slowly calming, but the weight of his decision pressed harder with every second. He had chosen to stay. The alien girl leaned against him, exhausted, her small body trembling as if every step of her journey had drained her strength. The golden-eyed woman brushed the girl's hair back gently, her face soft with worry. The silver-eyed woman, however, stood tall and alert, her glowing eyes fixed on the forest where the hunters had vanished. David finally broke the silence. "Who are they? Why do they want her?" The silver-eyed woman turned to him, her cloak swaying like dark smoke. Her voice was smooth but cold. "Hunters seek the key, the child is key." David frowned. He had heard the word before, from the girl herself, but he still didn't understand. "What does that mean?" "She's just a child." The golden-eyed woman shook her head. "Not just child. She is born with code inside. Her blood, her mind, can open the gate." David's chest tightened. "Gate? What kind of gate?" The golden-eyed woman's golden eyes darkened as if shadows passed through them. "A door, a weapon, a path to endless war." The word struck him like cold steel. Suddenly everything made sense, the hunters, their desperation, the wreckage glowing with power. The girl wasn't simply lost. She carried something inside her, something that could change everything. The girl clung to David's arm, whispering in her broken English, "I don't want open. I want home." Her glowing eyes filled with tears. David knelt down beside her, his voice firm but gentle. "You won't open it. Not if you don't want to." The silver-eyed woman studied him closely. "You protect her, but protection is not enough. Hunters will return. More will come. Stronger." David looked at the wreckage. Its light grew brighter, pulsing faster as if it were waking up. "What about this? Can it be destroyed?" The golden-eyed woman shook her head. "No, only sealed. Only key can seal, but..." Her eyes shifted to the girl. "She is too weak." The girl shook her head violently, her voice trembling. "No, if I seal..." "They find me. They take me. I die." Her fear cut through David's chest. She wasn't just a key to power, she was also a prisoner of it. The hunters wanted to use her. The guardians wanted her to seal the wreckage. And all she wanted was freedom. David stood again, his voice hardening. "Then we find another way." "There has to be one." The silver-eyed woman's lips tightened. "Human speaks with courage. But courage will not stop war. The golden-eyed woman placed a hand on her sister's arm, silencing her. She looked at David carefully, as if weighing something inside him. Maybe. Human is part of way, David blinked. Me? I don't understand. She stepped closer, her golden eyes glowing brighter. You stood against hunters. You survived. They respect you now. They will not stop, but you may stand between Key and them. You may change path, David felt a chill. He was no soldier, no chosen warrior. He was just a man who had taken a wrong path in a forest and found a child. Yet here, in this strange night, the fate of something far greater rested on his shoulders. The alien girl tugged his sleeve again, her eyes pleading. Don't leave me. David knelt, meeting her gaze. I won't. The guardians exchanged another glance. The silver-eyed woman finally nodded. Then we move. More hunters come with dawn. The golden-eyed woman lifted the girl gently into her arms. We take her to safe place. But safe is not forever. Safe only buys time. David followed them out of the clearing, his eyes drawn once more to the wreckage. Its glow spread wider now, lighting the trees with an eerie shine. He knew it would not stay silent. As they vanished into the forest, he realized something terrifying. Protecting the girl was no longer just about keeping her alive. It was about stopping a war that could consume worlds, and the hunters were not the only ones who wanted the key. The night gave way to the first gray light of dawn. The forest was damp with mist, every leaf dripping with cold water. David walked behind the two guardians, his boots sinking in the soft earth. The alien girl rested in the golden-eyed woman's arms, her head against her shoulder, half asleep but still trembling. Every sound made David tense, the rustle of branches, the crack of twigs. He knew the hunters would not give up. They would return with greater force. He could feel it, like a storm pressing on the air before thunder. The silver-eyed woman stopped suddenly. Her glowing gaze swept the forest. They follow. David's heart sank. How many? Her lips pressed into a thin line. Too many. The guardians quickened their pace, moving deeper into the forest until they reached a stone ridge that jutted out like broken teeth. Beneath it was a cave hidden by vines. The golden-eyed woman lowered the girl gently inside. Here, safe. For a moment. But the girl grabbed David's hand, her voice weak but urgent. No safe, they come. Before he could answer, the sound of the forest changed. A low hum spread through the trees, followed by the harsh hiss of many voices. Red eyes appeared in the mist, dozens of them glowing like embers in the dark. The hunters had returned. David's throat went dry. There were too many this time. The circle of glowing eyes grew wider, surrounding the ridge. Weapons pulsed with deadly light, humming with energy. The silver-eyed woman stepped forward, her cloak flaring as light rippled across her arms. Stand back, she told David. Her voice was sharp, commanding. The hunters hissed, their voices merging into a chorus of hate. The leader from before stepped forward, larger than the rest, its scars glowing faintly under the mist. It raised its weapon high and roared. The battle began. Light exploded in the forest as the two guardians unleashed their power. The golden-eyed woman raised a barrier of shimmering light, blocking the first wave of glowing blades. The silver-eyed woman struck back, her hands releasing arcs of energy that sliced through the mist like lightning. The hunters rushed forward, their weapons clashing against the barrier. Sparks flew. The ground shook. The air burned with heat and sound. David grabbed a fallen branch again, gripping it tight. He knew it was useless against such power, but he could not stand aside, not when the girl was behind him watching with terrified eyes. One hunter broke past the barrier, its red eyes locked on the cave. David swung with all his strength, smashing the branch across its head. The impact cracked the wood, but the hunter staggered, stunned for a moment. David pushed it back, his chest heaving, every muscle burning. Stay away from her, he shouted. The girl cried out his name, her broken English trembling. David! The silver-eyed woman leaped forward, finishing the hunter with a blast of light. She looked at David sharply. You fight like fool, but brave fool. The golden-eyed woman strained as more hunters pressed against her barrier. Cracks of light spread across it, threatening to shatter. We cannot hold long.